My name is Belinda Wasser, and today we're going to talk about what is a virtual assistant and how can they help me. And I think this is a hot topic because everyone either wants a virtual assistant or they think they should have one. And I agree. I think everyone on the planet should have a virtual assistant. I am a virtual assistant and I have a virtual assistant. So what I want to do first, let me just tell you a little bit about my story. So I'm going to move you over to a different screen. So well, I just want to position the chat too. Hold on a second. So if you guys have any questions, drop them in the, just drop them in the chat. And I'm also happy to answer questions along the way if you are not clear about something, because I want you to be really clear. So 9 years ago, I started this business called Rocket Girl Solutions. I work with solo professionals, very, very small businesses, and I act as their part-time business manager / virtual assistant. I love doing it. I have over 50 clients all over the country, and I figured out the systems to put in place for it to be successful. So I was able to support my daughter and myself from our house, working virtually. So in 2018, I started a second business called the VA Connection. And the VA Connection is a professional online community for virtual assistants with the goal really to educate and connect them. And we currently have 5,300 members in over 47 countries. So that's been, it's a huge growing industry. And, I should have looked up before I did this, how many people sort of identify as a virtual assistant. But just on LinkedIn alone, I can't remember the number, but I looked it up like a couple of years ago when I was thinking of starting it. The number is staggering, the amount of people who are virtual assistants. How many of you have ever worked with the VA or would like to work with the VA? If you just want to put your hand up. Yeah, it's great. And what's cool too is some of the members of the VA Connection are on this call with us. So we have real life, live actual VAs here who are awesome. So that's my story. Whoops, sorry, wrong way. And so what I've found over and over again is that if you are doing everything in your business, you probably are not feeling great. You're probably feeling overwhelmed. You're doing things that someone else can do. Like how many times do you have to do a repetitive task before you hand it to somebody else? Things are falling through the cracks. That's usually the first question I ask my clients when they say, what should we work on? I say, okay, where are the mistakes happening? That's where we should sort of plug the dam right away. And also frustrated, right? Because, I've been in this place with other businesses before I hired help where I just felt like if I could just get out in front of this, if I could just work all day Saturday, I will be in a place where I can handle it. But that's not usually the case. We just sort of feel as business owners, under the weight of it all. So the other thing that is quite common is that people will say these things. We've all heard them. Tell me if you've ever said these. By the time I show someone what I want to do, I might as well do it myself. I don't know what I would give them. Where would I start? I've tried this before. I'm not making enough money right now to hire someone, right? We've all heard these things and said these things, and they feel true. However, I think we'd rather feel like this. And the thing about that I've found is that by having someone help me, it sort of quiets things down in my brain, and I'll have really good ideas for my business because I'm not worrying about, the small things in the big picture of what I'm doing. And I can have big ideas about what I want to do with my business. And the thing is that every VA that I've met, and myself included, love what we do. Like, bring me your horrible PowerPoint presentation. Bring me, your Excel spreadsheet that you're trying to figure out the formula. Bring me your website. I find that work very relaxing, and I know a lot of VAs do, which is why we're doing it. But this is the key, and this is usually the barrier. It's critical that you step into having help before you feel like the time is right. And it's very scary, and we're going to talk about responsibly delegating and all of the questions that come up. when we think about this. So first I want to talk about specifically what a virtual assistant is so we're all on the same page. So a VA provides administrative, technical, or creative assistance to clients. So that's really broad, right? You could even, a bookkeeper could be a virtual assistant. You know, there's lots of, and there are people that do creative things that don't call themselves VA. They might call themselves, you know, graphic designer. So there's a really broad range, and some VAs specialize in a narrow niche, and some are very broad. The key difference is that instead of working for one person full time, they usually work virtually, typically from home, Starbucks, you know, and they provide these services to a wide range of clients. Now, one of the reasons that this can be so appealing to people is that, for example, I have a client, his name is Bob, and he lives in New Jersey, and I do his scheduling. I'm at my desk all day long, so if Bob sends me an email, chances are I'll probably see it within, you know, 20 minutes, an hour if I'm on the phone. And so it's almost as if I'm sitting outside his door, you know, in an old-fashioned office. So he gets that kind of service, but he's only paying me for the time that I work. So that's one of the reasons that I think this is so attractive to people. All right, so what can I delegate? So let's just talk about some different things. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit later specifically how to delegate them successfully. So social media execution, event planning, calendar management, email newsletter support, website updates, you know, all different kinds of things. Graphic support is another. So what other things are you guys interested in having support? You want to put some things in the chat, or just let me know? What are some other things that you'd think, oh my gosh, if I could just have someone help me with this? All right. Oh, invoicing. Yes, invoicing, that's really great. Yeah, that's a good thing to do. It's, you know, very specific content creation, operations manual, email list compiling. Okay, great. Great. Opt-in, of course. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Okay, good. MailChimp. All right. That's great. Thanks, you guys. All right. So one of the things that I learned a few years ago, I hired my first virtual assistant. It was probably five years ago. And I put an ad on Craigslist, and 60 people applied for the job. And one of the things that I realized immediately is that people think that a virtual assistant is an assistant that's virtual. And that's not really true. You need to make sure you get the right skills for the job. And often, you know, I remember one of my clients, she said, because people are, you know, you're trying to hire someone you know, because it seems like a good idea. So she hired her smart friend, Elaine, who was an attorney, and you know, attorneys are really smart, right? You have to be smart. But her attorney friend really didn't know how to do the work that Michelle wanted her to do. So a smart friend might seem like a good idea, but unless they have the specific skills, like unless your smart friend is a virtual assistant and knows MailChimp, probably it's not a good fit. When you're interviewing for a virtual assistant, and I've done this hiring my whole career, but I usually create sort of a filter, like I guess it's like a tripwire or something, when I'm weeding the candidates out. So for example, I'll write a job description, I'll post it, and then I'll say, if you're interested in this job, please tell me, you know, 3 things about you, or it could be any question, but something relevant, you know, to the job. And if I get an email and they send me a resume or a LinkedIn profile or whatever it is that is unbelievable, but they don't do the 3 things that I asked them, I don't even look further. I actually don't even look at the resume if they don't, because for me, when I'm interviewing someone, we're like on best behavior, right? This is like a first date. Everybody's clothes are, you know, ironed, because if they can't hear me or take my request in the first time, it's probably going to be an issue after we all relax. So that's always a good idea to do that. And you might need to hire more than one person. I mean, I have a person that handles my website development. I have someone that helps me with my graphics. you know, and I have someone that helps me with my administrative tasks. So it might be that you need to hire more than one person. The best way to find someone is to get a referral from a friend or a colleague, because they're going to tell you the nuances of this person. You know, they're going to say she's really good at this or not good at that, or, you know, you'll understand the communication style. And frankly, the best way for a VA to get work is from a referral, because we're trying to find the right fit too. You know, that's the key. You know, to being a VA is to try to figure out how to find that right fit with our clients. I want to talk about students for a minute. So students are fabulous. I think internships are amazing. My daughter is 19 and she'll be a sophomore at Roanoke College next year, and she helps me with my work all the time. In fact, my clients will hire her to do certain things. However, you really want to think about, and this goes for no matter who you hire, but I had this really interesting situation a couple of weeks ago. I don't have a presence on Instagram for the virtual assistant connection, and I really should. And it's not even should, I want to. So my daughter, little Miss Instagram, I say to her, hey, can you help me with this? Well, what I realized after about 15 minutes is that she's on Instagram all day, but she doesn't understand, you know, like I said, well, how do you set up the highlights, and how do you this, and how do you that, and how long is this in your feed? And she didn't understand the strategy. So if you're hiring someone to help you, it's important that you have the strategy down, and we're going to talk more about this so that they can help you. Now, if you hire a skilled virtual assistant who does, for example, you know, Instagram for many people, then she can help you develop that strategy. But an important part of this is to make sure you have the right person for the job. And we're going to talk about delegation. Delegation is a big piece. All right, so I found this picture yesterday, and I know it's a wedding, but the point of this is that a woman has her back to her help. You know, let's pretend that this is an office and she's wearing a suit, but the idea is she's throwing something behind her, and people are trying to catch it because they want to help her. But this is not really delegating. You know, sort of, I think about it like, you know, hitting a ball over the net, like, can you fix this? You know, that's not really effective delegating. Delegating needs to have systems created beforehand. You can create these systems with your VA, absolutely, but you need to be a part of the conversation. And because successful delegation is a relationship. It's not, you know, I remember at one time, this is like the epitome of what it is. I was meeting with a client, and she said, my business manager, I keep asking her to do the strategic planning, and she's just not doing it. And I'm thinking, what? Like, you know, that's a really ridiculous example. But she really thought she could delegate the strategic planning for her business. Now, can she work with her business manager to do that? Absolutely. But as the business owner, you have to know what's going on. You have to be a part of the strategy, a part of the system when it's being set up. And when that doesn't happen, that's when it falls apart. So let's talk about how to delegate. If you want to delegate social media execution, unless you hired a social media expert, you wouldn't say a phrase like, I want to be on Facebook more. Can you handle that? It would be much more specific. Like, you know, I want to put my newsletters on social media, and then you can ask your VA, do you have experience with that? And then if yes, how would you do that? What's the system? And you don't need to understand it enough to do it, but you have to understand what they're doing, because they're really acting on your behalf. Event planning, if you think about it, you wouldn't say, you know, would you plan a birthday party for my husband? You would say, I'd like to have a venue with this kind of food. You know, can you find 3 restaurants that have entrees, you know, in the $30 range with outdoor dining. You know, you would have sort of a vision of what you want, and then they can come back to you and say, this is what I found. But you really have to sit down and think about what you're asking them to do. Calendar management. So again, my client Bob, who I mentioned earlier, I manage his calendar. What happens is we have a system, and we came up with it together. And usually these systems are created because something breaks. So for example, Bob, when he's ready for me to get involved, he'll have email threads back and forth, and he'll then include me and say, Belinda will take it to the next step. That means for me that I read the thread and I know this person's in LA and he wants to meet on, they're talking about Tuesday. And so I suggest times for them to meet, and then I put it on a spreadsheet so Bob can see who I've emailed, who I haven't, and what the status is. So there's a system. He didn't just say, handle my calendar. Now, in the beginning, we didn't have that spreadsheet, but I realized that Bob was getting anxious because he wasn't exactly sure about who I was emailing and who I wasn't. He couldn't track it. So that's why I created that spreadsheet, so he could see when I emailed people and and what the comments were. So it's important to work with your virtual assistant to figure out the system and make sure that it fits your needs. Email newsletter support, same kind of thing. Your VA may know MailChimp, and they might, like me, have 20 clients who you do email newsletters for. So I certainly have suggestions, but I don't write the content. Content creation, I know someone mentioned that. That's a little tough to do. There are VAs who can do that, but you have to make sure that's their specialty, content creation. Because while I'm good at a lot of things, I cannot create content for my clients at all. I can have an opinion about it. I can say, well, this is really great, or I think it's needs to be more casual or more formal, but I can't write a newsletter for most of my clients. They're doing very specific things that I'm not an expert at. Website updates, same thing. You could ask your virtual assistant if they're good at websites to, go through and see if she or he can find things that are broken or links that aren't working or test, what's working. But that you need to be specific about what you're looking for. And the same thing with graphic support. When I work with Mark, my graphics person, I'll show him, this is where the graphics need to go. This is what I'm trying to relate to. It needs to be in this color palette to match this. I wouldn't just say to him, hey, can you make me something cool? And you guys wouldn't do that either, but I'm just trying to really hammer the point of how specific we need to be when we delegate. And the other, so the keys are remembering that you're responsible, your hands are on the wheel, and that they're helping you, or that let me just leave it at that for this point. You want to be clear about the outcome. I want a party. I want a PowerPoint that has, my branding. I want it moved onto a template. You just want to be very specific. And then I have to tell you, the best relationships with my clients I have are the ones who are available and for questions and ready to make decisions. Because if I'm working on their work and I ask a question and they go away for a week or even 3 days, I have to think, what was I doing? But if they answer me, like the same day, or I have a couple of clients, they'll answer me like right away because they're at their computers. I can make so much progress in so much less time because they're ready to do that. They're right in there with me, and we get momentum, and that really makes it fun for both of us. You want to talk about timelines and deadlines. That's, a lot of people don't like to do that, but it's really important because without that, like I have some clients that say no rush, and what they mean is you don't have to do it right now. And I have other clients that say no rush, and they mean like sometime this year. So you want to be specific. Can you do this? I had a request actually yesterday, which I love. She said, can we get this newsletter out by Wednesday? And I said, you bet, I'll send you a text today. That's clear. But someone just sending me their newsletter, unless I've had a long relationship with them, I don't understand their timelines. I have a bunch of financial planning clients, and they're great clients for VAs because they plan. And they'll send me their newsletter a whole week before. And then I have other clients that we have to have, rules about, like, I need it at a certain time if we're going to publish at this time, because they'll just fly in at the last minute and want me to do the work. So this is a very important thing to track. And then you also want to keep track of what you've asked them to do, because things get lost, and and so you want to know what you're waiting for. And then this last thing might seem obvious, but it's one of those things that's sort of like the elephant in the room. Make sure the person you're delegating to wants to do the work. because you might hire a virtual assistant to do one thing and they have no interest, skill, or desire to do something else. So have that conversation with them. You know, do you want to manage this project? Do you want to create content? In my case, I'd say, no, I can point you to somebody else, but I can't do that for you. So make sure that you understand, you know, that you make sure that they want to do the work. And then let's just talk about, if we're almost done, a few ways of tracking and delegating. So some of my clients use project management software. It's up to the client to provide me with a seat, meaning, you know, they pay for the software and they provide me with, you know, an account essentially. If it's a paid service, and that will connect us together. I have some clients, we have weekly phone calls. Some are only email requests. But you know, I make sure, it's my job to make sure I have all the information that I need to perform the task. And it's really the job of the person who's delegating to do the best job they can in making sure that I have all that information. Now, this last slide, I just want to show you how specific I am when delegating. So this is what happens when I get a new client in my VA business. And you can see I'm delegating here to Rachel, and it's very specific. I could have said to her, can you please onboard the new client? And then she would say, okay, what does that mean? Okay, I have a Dropbox, something, whatever, you know, and she might miss something, or I might miss something. So the great thing about project management and delegation is if you sit down and take the time, and to the point of that first slide where it says, by the time I do it, you know, I might as well just do it myself. But I did this once, and then I tweaked it as things, you know, as things popped up. But this is exactly what needs to happen when I onboard a new client in my virtual assistant business. And the result is when they show up for the first meeting, we're ready to go. But you can see it's add to toggle, create a folder in Dropbox, add to the client, you know, rate sheet. So the result of this, I don't think this is where I was going, but I don't think I said this, is that I have a really well thought out process. Now, you can get your VA to help you with this. I have clients that ask me to help them set up the processes, and I can absolutely do that. But the question you want to ask yourself is, then what happens? And then what happens? And just keep going all the way through the process. And so I took the time, I did this, and now I've probably onboarded 50 new clients with this process. And I did have to invest, you know, an hour, maybe more, thinking it through, but it's done. And now I'm just tweaking it. So it's a really great way to work.
Belinda, can I just ask, what system did you use for that?
Teamwork.
Huh.
Yeah, you can do it, you know, so here's the other thing. Oops, I meant to move the pictures so I can look at you. Here's the other thing. You can do it with a Word document, and you can just have, like, I used to have an online store, and I tracked 80 vendors and, you know, 3,000 orders every month. And how I did it was I printed out the order and I had a tick sheet. I stapled a piece of paper to the top, and it was like, you know, create invoice, send, you know, order product, you know, whatever it was. So it doesn't have to be, Teamwork is expensive. It's like $60 a month. Some of those other tools are free, but you could literally write it on a piece of paper and is there a thing as copying anymore? But you know what I mean? Make a stack of them. And every time you onboard a new client. So it's really, it doesn't have to be high tech, and that doesn't have to be the barrier. It's just thinking it through and then being able to give it to someone else. And then, oh, let me tell you another great way. This is how I do this with my VA. I videotape, listen to me, I'm 100 years old. I make a video of what I'm doing. So I'll say, let's say I wanted her to do my newsletter. So I would use a tool called Loom, and I would capture my screen and maybe my face, and I would say, hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how I'd like you to do my newsletter. So, and I do it and I explain it, and then I name it something that is meaningful, and then I save that video, because if my VA leaves, I have it. And I created a, this is not for Rocket Girl, this is for the VA connection, because there's lots of things that have to happen over and over and over. And there are, I looked the other day, I think I have close to 60 videos of things that I now no longer have to do. And you want to make them bite-sized. And if she leaves or I need to create, what's probably going to happen is I'm going to need to add to the team. I can say to the new team member, okay, now you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Watch this video and let me know if you have any questions. So that's a great way to do it. And then you have something for, you know, people to watch and go through at their own pace. And I asked my VA, I said, after you watch this, please create a checklist. And you can certainly do that. And so now we both have the checklist. So this is where I can be found. If you know anyone that wants to be a VA, please tell them about my free online classroom. I would love to have them there. There are some virtual assistants here that are amazing on this call. And I am not in the business of matchmaking VAs, and I'm not in the business of, you know, placing them. However, if you want to hire one and you want me to put a post in my group and you write a job description, I would be happy to do that. And yeah. And they range in, you know, they range in skills, they range in price. Some are newbies, some are seasoned like me. But there are some, there's quite a big handful now who have gone through my trainings, and I have successfully referred some of them. So let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And there's a few questions in chat here.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Anne asks, what do you think of Loom?
I love it. I use it every day.
Do you do it for your videos, or?
Yeah.
And then do the VAs, will they type up from that? Like if you had systems that you wanted people, I've heard this before, of sort of dictating, and then they print it out for operations. But you like it for that?
Yeah, I like it for a lot of things. So what I'll do is, and it's kind of, it's a lot of work at first. However, there are now 60 things I'm not doing, right? So, because I don't need to be an expert at them. So for example, in the free online classroom, it's on Facebook. Every time someone joins it, what happens is I take a screenshot. They have to answer 3 questions. Take a screenshot of the 3 questions. Then they're moved over to a spreadsheet. Information, you know, is collected. I figured out what I need and how I want to do it. And I'm done being an expert at that. I no longer have to screenshot Facebook, you know. So whatever it is, you know, for you, I'm trying to think of what would be, you know, like invoicing. So someone was asking about invoicing. You sit down and say, this is how we invoice. You turn on Loom. You have to promise that you're not going to try to make it perfect. That was hard for me at first. Now I just start talking. I'm like, okay, we're going to invoice. Open up QuickBooks. Now we're going to open up my spreadsheet. I want you to take this and put it over here. This, then you add this up, put the number here, save it over there. You know, this is the text that goes to the client. You always BCC or CC me on it. Like it's got to be that clear, because the thing is that even with all the people that I've worked with, everybody does it differently, and people think that it's the same. A newsletter that's 20 different things, you know, or invoicing, that could be send a PayPal link. You know what I mean? So you have to be very specific, and you can ask them for suggestions. Like people ask me this all the time: how do your other people do this? And you know, here you go. This is, you know, I don't share their work, but I'll say, well, these are the 5 different ways I've seen this happen. You know, or I can see a hole in the flow, and then yes, my VA will then create a checklist. So I would walk her through, you know, a Dropbox folder, putting her in Toggle, adding her to the spreadsheet. And then she would make the checklist. I made that particular checklist, but yeah, she's made a lot of them.
Okay. And then there was a question, what is the price range for a VA?
If you're going to work with someone in the United States, it ranges. I don't like the people who I'm training to go out at anything less than $35 an hour. I think there's a piece where the VA needs to feel professional enough to be able to charge that amount. And if you get people that are charging $15 an hour, they're probably not treating their business as a business, and that's not good, because you're not looking for a helper. You're looking for a professional person to assist you with your business. They go from there. I charge $90 or $100 an hour, depending on depending on how you buy my time. People buy it in 5 and 10 hour chunks ahead of time. 5 hours is $500 and 10 hours is $900. But it's a range. And people like me also, what I do sometimes is I'll create the system and then hand it off to my client's VA, because it doesn't make sense for me to run certain systems. Like one of my clients is a nutritionist and she wanted to set up a billing solution. So Robin and I worked through the billing solution. I trained her VA, who she probably pays $35 an hour. And then Tracy manages that, and then Tracy comes to me with questions. So there's all different ways this can work. But yeah, so there's a huge range. But any other questions, you guys?